What we have today is a grudge match between old and new.
That's right, we got two Rams with Cummins engines, and we're gonna find out what's better, the 94 or the brand new one. Let's go hit it.
Tommy, we're gonna start this video off the dumbest way possible.
Yeah, man, we gotta start every good comparo with the Tug of War, because of course that's why people buy trucks for.
Yeah, it's the least important thing that these trucks could possibly do. So we've got a big old strap right here that we're gonna hook to the back of each one.
Got that big boy 24,000 pound strap, because we're gonna need every bit of that, and we're gonna unleash these two diesel engines upon each other, four-wheel drive low. We're gonna see who wins. Case, what are you driving?
I've got a 1994 12-valve Cummins. It's a second gen, 5-speed manual, 4-wheel drive.
And this is the newest generation of Cummins with a 6-speed automatic and a 6.7 liter Cummins turbo diesel and 4-wheel drive. So what do you think? You gonna win this one?
Well, I gotta be honest, I don't feel great about it because I'm completely open diffs, no traction control. My truck weighs about 6,000 pounds. We've put yours on the scale, it's over 9,000 pounds. And I'm on 35s, you're on 37s.
Yeah, but you got that big ass turbo.
Yeah, I'm sure that's gonna make a big difference.
All right, so here's what we'll do. We're both in 4 low. I'll go 3, 2, 1, pull. Then we can use some strategy if we want, or just go like hell and we'll see what happens.
Sounds good, count us off.
In 3, 2, 1, pull. Oh, Case is right actually. It is going pretty good for the 6.7.
Oh wow, oh geez. Ah! No!
Wow, I'll be darned, that actually did something.
Yeah, so when trucks are relatively evenly matched, like my truck and the Cybertruck, they don't go anywhere. But when one truck is significantly better on traction, it makes a big difference.
We're also looking at a truck that's 50% heavier than yours, so that explains a lot of it.
All right, let's move on to the next test. You like that?
That's a sound, my dude. Is it broken?
No, of course not. Broken, this? The words you're saying don't mean anything.
I'm surprised you have a dash left, look at that.
A great dash.
This is a museum piece, Case, we can't drive this.
Now, before we move on to the next test, I want to point out that that truck is very much kitted out for off-road. This one is a little bit more modified for power. So let's show the drag race that I did against Andre between this and that.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Ooh! Okay, so my transmission is a 6-speed, and it's very quick to shift.
Bogging, but into a little bit of boost up behind Andre. He's taking off well. Come on, 12 out.
This truck with me in it probably weighs about 8,800 pounds. So, no way!
I'm catching up.
What?
Really ringing out fourth to do that. That was just an okay run. I could have tried to snatch fifth, but I was still catching them. And a 17.6 at 88. Not a spectacular run. We are a mile above sea level on prep surface. It is a ridiculously hot day, but still managed to take them.
Not too great. I got a 17.6. And I was really running out of steam there in my second to last gear, but I didn't want to snatch fifth because I was worried if I went for a gear change, I wouldn't catch you at the very end there.
I think it was a photo finish. I was talking like it was a Sunday afternoon drive. I ran a 17.57, almost identical time to you. And all of a sudden, you came out of nowhere, just whoosh.
Tommy, look at the gearing.
That is one of the cool things about this truck, is we got that 5-speed manual trans, And what's interesting about this is you really drive it around starting in second gear, right, Case, on a daily basis?
Yeah, typically this first gear, as they label it on the shifter, low, is definitely a granny gear. If you're pulling a trailer, makes sense. If you're on a trail, for some reason, makes sense. You want to go down the logs?
Yeah, let's go down logs. So we're going to demonstrate one of maybe the problems with these old second gens is these were trucks built to tow and built to haul first and foremost.
There are no problems with second gens, Tommy.
One of the many. So the ride quality, Case,
Is spectacular.
less than luxurious. We'll go with that.
Have you not seen the advertising from back when this truck was new? They touted how smoothly it rides.
Yeah, that's right. That was in the era before lung cancer.
Before lung
You could
cancer.
do whatever you wanted.
Things
you
were
could
better those days.
smoke whatever you wanted. There were no problems. It was the 90s.
You act like the 90s were the 1940s.
Hey, man. It was pre-Tommy and Case, so it basically was.
Look at this engine braking, Tommy. You don't have this. Oh my God. We could use a little bit more of it, maybe. You're being very dramatic.
I feel like a Weeble, Case.
No, look how smooth it is. Got Bilstein shocks. This is a puck level. I would love to do like a nice Carly system, but those are expensive.
It's like getting your very own personal chiropractor.
Should we do trenches next?
We are, yeah. So that was Logs course. This is the Andre's Pit course. This is the Onyx Off-Road Andre's Pit course. Onyx Off-Road, your go-to source for off-road trail navigation. And this is a trenches course, so we're gonna see how the articulation is.
Lined up here and back it up a little bit.
So this truck's got solid axles, which means the front wheels and the rear wheels are tied together, give you that most possible off-road articulation. Or we'll see.
Well, maybe some articulation in the frame.
Now this is actually really cool, Case. So you were telling me, apart from that little puck in the front end of this truck, suspension stock.
Yeah, exactly. It's stock springs.
Dude, these trucks sat so high. People give modern trucks hell about, the height of them. This thing is huge.
Well, they sat very high in the back end because they put a huge block on the four-wheel drives underneath the leafs.
Okay.
But yeah, I just leveled out the front end, did it as cheaply as possible. One day this will have nice suspension like what the new truck has, but that day is not today. Also, the funny thing about watching this go up is the bumper gaps change a bunch as it articulates, and so does the angle between the cab and the bed. But here is the point where you'll notice I'm open diffs, so there's only so much I can do without having to use a little bit of momentum.
Yeah, interesting. So what's happening here is we got the right front in the air and the left rear in the air, and then those are just spinning and we're not going anywhere.
Exactly.
But we got to come in so we can power through it, right, Case? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, nothing a little extra throttle and momentum can't handle.
I'd like you to do that again. I'm going to grab that camera because you are 100% right. I'm looking in the rearview mirror.
At the angle of the bed?
And you just watched the truck flex. That's crazy. But actually, I'm saying that like it's a bad thing. Really, it's not a bad thing, right? Because that's the truck doing what it's meant to do.
Yeah.
Which is kind of conform to the pavement. But here, I'm going to grab the camera. And we'll go down that, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. So,
You want me to just go down it?
yeah, you want to just go down it? Here, I'll get the shot out the back here.
Yeah.
Should be able to see.
And call me crazy, but I actually like a chassis that flexes a little bit because it, I don't know, it just, I feel like a lot of modern vehicles are so stiff, they kind of lose a little bit of character, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm just talking crazy, but I don't mind older vehicles that have a little give to the frame.
No, I'm with you. Actually, I think, this whole fight towards stiffness nowadays,
Sometimes it's a little too much.
sometimes it's a little much. Exactly. So there you can see, it's a dramatic, it might not look like much
Yeah.
on camera, but we probably got 2.5 lateral inches of movement. But keep in mind, guys, this is not broken, right? That's just what they were
That's just
intended
what they
to
do.
Yeah. And that's why you had that gap between the cab and the front and the bed, is so that you can get that movement.
Give it a little space.
I think what we're learning here, though, is even though the commercials did kind of tout these as off-road trucks with their toughness,
Ish.
you're not running out to the trails on a weekly
No.
basis.
Too wide, too stiff, too heavy. It's just not right.
Right.
Right or left?
I go left.
Is that hard?
Yeah, this is the harder area. Hang on, we'll let Alex zoom up into position. But the cool thing is regardless of the capability of this thing, you put on 35-inch tall tires like you have here, you're gonna have ground clearance to basically do whatever you want.
Yeah. The thing with both of these trucks is that they're tall enough that they will drive over quite a lot of things. But as far as a vehicle that you would enjoy taking down a trail, neither one of these trucks is really set up that way. They're just too big, unwieldy. They can do it, but it's not what they're meant to do.
And the other thing about these trucks is you get them stuck, you get them real stuck, right? Want your heated seat on, heated steering wheel?
No.
How about
Why don't we put your heated seat and steering wheel on, Tommy, since you bring them up?
XM audio? Would you like that? Some Apple CarPlay?
Yeah, because everyone is listening to XM these days.
Hell yeah, man. If you're of the age of 90 like I am, I can't even see the off-road course.
Yeah, so it's one of the things about these trucks is you can't see, and literally the entire logs course is obstructed. You can't see anything over the hood of this truck. Also, Tommy, is this any better?
Oh, yeah,
Coming
man.
down these logs?
Look at that. Look how smooth
This is
that
not good at all.
This is smooth.
Oh my God. Ow.
Fine, you're fine. I didn't even tell there were logs there, could you?
That was bad. That was genuinely not any better.
Listen, neither truck is...
And I'm on stock springs.
Okay, neither truck is all that comfy, but this is a little comfier.
I'll tell you what, driving around on the road, it is comfier, but...
Off-road, it's not great.
No, off-road, that was really not much improved. You might have better articulation, though. For sure, you've got a limited slip in the rear, which is going to make cruising up these trenches a lot easier.
Did you hear that? Parking sensors.
Yeah, how annoying is that?
That's for men right there.
You're fighting an uphill battle with that one.
As you can hear by my low, manly voice, that
Are we
is
in
something...
Are we in low range? I
We're
guess
in
you
low
push the
range, yeah.
button for it. I've got a lever. Levers are better.
That's easier.
It's
Look at that.
a little sadder.
Look at that. Anyone can drive that automatic. Just
Oh,
get
it sounds horrible when you
fine.
shift the
It's
transmission.
a quality item. Oh, what was that?
I don't know, but my truck didn't do that.
All right, going up the trenches course. Fully articulated. Look at that. Look at that.
I'll tell you what, the 37s are pretty cool, and you can even get these trucks on 40s. Not that you can't do that on a second gen, but it's easier on something like this. Those AEV Prospector trucks are pretty badass.
So cool. So stuck in roughly the same place you were, but because we have that LSD and because we have like a brake lock differential set up, there you go.
Yeah, the limited slip makes a big difference.
I will say, Case, 31,000 miles. This truck is creakier than yours, but that's to be expected because you have how many miles?
269,000 miles.
Just 270,000 miles. So of course the 31,000 mile truck is going to be creakier.
Of course.
That is to be expected. Here, we'll go down logs one more time.
No.
Just to show
No.
the ride quality before we go up rocks.
Oh,
And you will see
heartbreaking.
that
Oh, it's already bad, and we're not even on the logs.
it's in fact smoother. We're putting it in front of the logs course, and all I see are the trees. Somewhere down there is an off-road obstacle.
Yeah.
No idea where.
I'll take
You
that.
want to put that?
I don't trust you.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
I'm not going to be able to hold it steady.
Maybe
though,
this will
because
demonstrate the
our ride
smoothness.
quality is so bad.
Look at that. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
The only thing keeping me in the truck is my seatbelt. If it weren't for that, I'd be out the window.
This truck brought to you by Workers' Comp.
Yeah. I'll have a talk to Roman. Although the worst was doing that in the Subaru Brat.
That was even worse in the bed. Yeah. All right, so we'll go up the Boulder Boulevard here.
You were mysteriously absent that day.
Yeah, weird how that works, huh? So this is our rocks course that Case did.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, Case, is look, neither of these, like you said, are going to be off-road rock crawler trucks.
And once again, we can't see the thing we're about to drive over at all because this huge hood, it's like 6 feet high.
And I don't have a front camera.
No, and typically we're not the kind of people to say, oh, you need a front camera. But in this truck,
Absolutely
you can see
do.
so little, you kind of do need it. Unless you've got a really good memory.
Really good psychic powers. If you're a tarot card reader of off-roading,
Yeah.
this is the truck for you. And nothing, can't see anything.
Yeah.
I could crush a small village right now.
It's
and
all sky, and we're barely tilted up at all.
No idea. No, neither of these are going to be an off-road truck.
No.
I think the new one's probably going to take you a little further because you have an LSD and brake lock differentials, that kind of thing. But if you want to go 4x4 and get a half ton.
It wins at traction and it wins at off-road, that's for sure. Now next up, we have another test that I devised. It's the sound battle. We're gonna see which truck makes a better noise.
Which truck makes less noise is the winner?
Which truck makes more noise and more good noise. Cool, Tommy, you can go ahead and start it up.
So I think you won the sound battle.
Yeah, for sure.
What if we do another sound battle? The most important sound battle from 2,401 RPM to 3,000.
I think I can rev up to 3,000. I got 4K governor springs.
You can't rev up to 3,000.
I got 4K governor springs.
Okay, well, okay, fine. How about 4,000? What do you think that red line's up? To 4,100.
Let's see you do 4,000. You might. I don't know. Maybe not.
So how does this bad boy drive, Case?
It's a pretty fun truck to drive. Something that I like about these older diesels is they're very mechanical and very visceral, which means you kind of feel everything that's going on in the truck. And to me, that makes it very entertaining. This also being an older truck, it's a 5-speed manual, which is not available anymore in the newer Cummins. Hasn't been since 2018, I believe.
It's pretty hard to believe that this is how they sold these trucks back in the 90s.
What do you mean?
Because this thing rattles and shakes
In all the best ways.
and sounds like it's from 1927 in all the best ways, you're right. But the amount of engine noise you get in here is incredible, and granted, you've done a lot of work to this engine, but when you had this truck stock, it wasn't a lot quieter.
No, it's the funny thing. This truck, the pipe is a bit louder than it was from the factory, but you really don't hear any exhaust noise. It's all induction noise and clatter that you hear coming through the firewall. The sound deadening is, it's not what it is today.
But you're right, I mean, that is what makes this truck so special. It is an auditory and a sensory experience, unlike pretty much on any other vehicle on the road. And what's cool about the second gen Rams is you still get that kind of unhinged clatter, but you don't have to live with some of the downsides of a first gen, and they're not as refined as a third gen, right? Like, you daily drive this truck.
Yeah, and it's really not bad to daily drive. Our roads here in Colorado are pretty rough because we get these crazy temperature swings. And I will say the harsh ride can get a little bit old. I would love at some point to do a slightly more soft ride suspension system on this, because I don't use this truck as much for towing. I use it as my camping rig, so having the big 8-foot bed is really nice, but I'd love to have a softer suspension.
So walk me through how you drive a Cummins, because with the manual transmission, it's not like a typical car where you have from like 2,500 to 6,000 RPM of rev range. It's actually a little tiny rev band, right?
Well, exactly. So the interesting thing about it is in a typical manual gas car, there's a lot of times where you could either go up a gear or down a gear if you wanted to. And in this truck, there's a lot less overlap because the motor is only happy through so many RPM. So at most times, there's usually a correct gear for you to be in and an incorrect gear for you to be in. Like, I'm going a little over 35 right now. If I tried to go to third, I mean, I'm basically wrung out. But if I, at 35, were to go to fifth,
It's too low.
yeah, it's kind of lugging it. So it's really not a lot of overlap between the gears just because this motor is happy in a pretty narrow window.
Now let's talk about the turbo on this truck, because that's one of the things that definitely stands out from the driving experience. So you have a slightly bigger than standard turbo.
Yeah, a little bit.
But from factory, these trucks didn't really make that much power, right?
No, they're super slow the way they come out of the box. So this truck and the mechanical injection pump in it, it's a 175 pump. So the factory output on this truck was 175 horsepower, 420 pound-feet of torque, so a lot more torque than horsepower, but still very slow from the factory, designed very much for fuel economy and longevity.
Yeah, right. But the cool thing about these engines, and I think one of the reasons that these have become so iconic, is that even though they had 175 horsepower from the factory, with not a lot of work, you can make these into beasts.
Yeah, and this one is not super heavily modified in that way, but it is, I mean, it's definitely sportier than it was from the factory.
Yeah, I mean, when you get this thing on boost in the right gear, we're going to go right here, it is an absolute beast. It does really, really well. So kids, let's talk a little bit about these second gen trucks beyond just the engine. So they built these from, what, like the mid-90s to the early 2000s?
Well, yeah, 94 was the first year, but Tommy, I don't know if there is anything to talk about beyond the engine. No. It is. It's a fun truck overall. These trucks definitely have a cult following, so the values on them seem a little ridiculous to some people. I can understand why. I picked this one up for $8,000, and I've put a lot of work into it. Repainted the truck, did a good bit of cosmetic work, and then had some fun under the hood. Yeah, the fact that some of them are commanding, $30,000 is a little crazy, but 94 to 2002.
Okay.
If I remember right, and then about halfway through then, 1998, I think, is when they went from the 12 valve to the 24 valve, which is when they moved away from a mechanical injection pump to an electric fuel pump. And these 12 valves are liked by a lot of people for the dependability of having a gear-driven mechanical injection pump. It's just another thing that lends to this being a really durable powertrain.
And what can people expect to pay, right, if they don't want a museum piece, but they also don't want a basket case? What does a nice truck like this go for?
10 to 20 grand, you can find plenty of nice ones. There's a lot of wiggle room in there. 15, you should be able to find a pretty nice second gen that doesn't have holes rusted through the body.
Yeah, and what are some of like the mechanical downsides of these trucks? Are there like known failure points?
Transmissions are not the best on these. So this 12 valve and like a 7.3 Power Stroke are kind of regarded as some of the most durable old school diesel trucks that you can get. The transmissions on these, not always the best. This one being a manual, NV4500, pretty solid transmission. They have some fixable issues with fifth gear, the way that they came from the factory. And then if you are going to hop them up and make some more power, obviously you need to do the clutch, but a bigger input shaft recommended as well, because I can tell you from experience, the stock input shaft on one of these is only going to handle so much.
And it does seem, I mean, the joke about second gens is that people call them Cummins shipping crates, right? Like you're buying the engine with a truck attached to it. And you do see a lot of these, at least I've seen a lot of these cases online with 250, 300,000 miles, where the bodies will just be wrecked, right? And the dashboards will be completely collapsed, but the engine will be fine.
Yeah, totally. Super, super strong motor. And a lot of people hate the rest of this truck. I was actually not planning on keeping this body and interior and everything. I was going to swap out for an older truck body, and I decided against doing that because the rest of this truck ended up being better than I expected. And I've grown to really love the second gen experience, if you want to call it that, from top to bottom. It's a good truck all around. There are things about it that are not great. They do rust. The bed on this truck is tapered towards the rear, which is a little funky, makes it harder to fit a topper. And then Mr. Truck talks about these bed sides not being as rigid and as strong as some of the other competitive trucks of the era. Yeah, the dash is cracked. These trucks have been around for a long time. Every flaw in them has been found.
Right.
And for most of it, there are some solutions. And if you find a good enough truck like this one, my dash is intact. My bed is just fine. I have a topper for it that I found that fits it perfectly. Yeah, and I drive it more than any other vehicle that I own. It's at 270,000 miles. Truck's doing fine.
What's cool about this is it's old enough to feel special, but not so old where you don't have AC, right? Or a radio or cruise control. Like, it's a pretty well-equipped truck. Like, this one's got power locks and power windows and functioning AC, and cases adapted this cool Bluetooth audio system to it.
Yeah, so I've got all the amenities that I need And as far as day-to-day driving it, yes, I have done a lot of work to this truck, but 95% of that was work that I've done to it by choice to improve it from what it was from factory, and not because it wasn't running or because it needed it. It was just things that I did because I wanted to. So it's been a really solid truck. I can't complain about it. If it wasn't a solid truck, then I would have passed it on, because we get to drive every kind of vehicle out there.
Yeah, it's true.
And yeah, I wouldn't put up with a vehicle that I didn't like.
So Case, this is the current generation of Cummins, and what generation are we on now?
Well, it's kind of the 5th gen, but this truck is not heavily updated from the 4th gen. It's same basic cab and architecture. So some people call it a 4.5 gen, which I think is kind of funny. But this truck is an absolute beast.
It is, yeah. Now, first difference you're probably going to notice, this truck is a 4-door, a crew cab variant, right?
Short bed.
Yep. And yours is a 2-door long bed.
Yep.
But I think back in the day, correct me if I'm wrong, you couldn't get a 4-door crew cab Cummins, right?
Well, so later versions of the 2nd gen had a half opening rear door. So it wasn't a full crew cab like this. But yeah, as time has gone on, this full 4-door cab has become more and more common.
Yeah.
And the short bed, you can get a full crew cab with a long bed, and those trucks are also massive. And then, of course, the Cummins is known now for the mega cab option, which a lot of people also really like.
And what that is additional space behind the rear seats, which is great if you're like a hot shotter, right? And you're looking to sleep in your truck. It gives you a lot more flexibility.
Yeah.
But what we're finding is even among folks that use these HD 2500s for work, like your roommate, right?
Sure.
Works with construction folks a lot. In that community, we're seeing a lot more 4-door trucks, when in the past those all would have been 2-doors. And partially because they're just more flexible, right? You can get a lot more people and things and more things to lock up in here. But partly because these trucks have gotten so expensive, they have to double for family duty.
Yeah, exactly. And they are. They've definitely gone up in price, but it's amazing the level of engineering and capability that's gone into these trucks. I mean, the tow ratings have shot up close to 20,000 pounds of towing on some of these rigs, especially leaning into the 3500s.
Oh,
pretty incredible capability that you get out of these trucks. And then this one that we've got in particular has quite a bit of modification, so less so for power output like my truck, but more so for off-road. So we're on 37-inch tires. We've got big AEV steel bumpers. We've got a 16,000-pound winch. We've got BDS suspension, really nice shocks on this truck. So it rides noticeably better.
Yeah, it's a really smooth riding truck. And even stock to stock, right? This thing was a much more comfortable setup, which is interesting because they are both solid axles, right? They both have coil springs on the front. So there's not that much difference between them in terms of like the basic architecture, but realistically, the driving experience is very different. So, guys, let's talk about this engine. So, what was the displacement on your 94 truck?
So my truck is a 5.9. This is a 6.7. Obviously, much higher power output.
Yes, much higher. So this is rated at 370 horsepower versus yours that was, what, 180?
Yeah.
And then 850 torque. But this is the low output version of the setup, and it is possible to get this same engine with over 1,000 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah, which is a little trailing behind the Duramax and the Power Stroke currently, but there's still a lot of things that this truck does really well. Of course, a factory exhaust brake on this truck, like the other two have as well, but the exhaust brakes on these Cummins seem to work better than the competitors. This exhaust brake that comes factory on this truck really does a lot to help you slow down, and especially when we're up here in the mountains trying to slow down a big trailer. It makes a huge difference. That's a really cool thing to have from the factory. Automatic transmission, of course, like we said, it's the only option now on these trucks. And overall, it's not as interesting of a truck to drive, but it's definitely more comfortable, a lot more refined, and more capable.
And a lot quieter.
Yeah.
So you still, and it's not all the time, but you still get a little bit of that iconic clatter and sound. But at least with a stock configuration like this with the intake and the exhaust, it's pretty rare to kind of get that shake and that visceral sound that you get at the Cummins, which I think is a little bit of a shame, right?
Yeah.
It means, well, we're cruising along at 50 right now. You can hear nothing at all, but it also means that you don't quite have that same emotional connection to your vehicle. Now, the fundamental engine design, inline six turbo diesel, is similar. The way the engines operate, though, are completely different. So, in case maybe you can explain what this means, this doesn't have a mechanical injection pump anymore. It's gone to electronic, right?
Yeah, which even in the 24 valves in the second gen, if you get a later second gen, that's going to be the same situation. And because of the fuel system on this truck, it runs a lot more precisely. This whole engine is a lot more refined, much quieter. It burns cleaner for sure, also partly because of the emissions system that's in place, which adds some complexity and does add some maintenance.
Yeah.
But the difference being, after a while, if you're standing next to my truck while it's running, it gets to be a little unpleasant.
Right.
This truck, you don't have that happen at all. So there's pros and cons there. Both of these trucks, great power, great fuel economy. They're pretty awesome powertrains.
Look, ultimately, this truck is going to be a lot more comfortable. It's going to be a lot more refined. I mean, we've got features like heated seats and a heated steering wheel. And this is not even an upper end version of this Ram. This is just
not at all.
a Bighorn, right?
Yeah.
But you can get like adaptive cruise control, power seats, you get big sunroofs if you want. But that means that, I mean, what is a fully loaded 2500 going to run you nowadays?
Oh, man, some of these HD trucks are getting into the six-figure range, which is pretty unbelievable. This particular truck, when we bought it a few years ago and the prices were a little less, was, what, 65-ish?
Yes, I think you're right on the money. Yeah, 65. But realistically, like, if you're not going to be buying a tradesman work model, you're going to be in the high 60s, low 70s.
Yeah,
minimum.
for sure. And honestly, as much as people don't really want to hear this, my truck would have been some over probably 30 when it was new.
Okay.
And when you factor inflation, these trucks are actually not that much more expensive than they used to be, and they have a lot more features.
Huh, okay.
And they've become much more capable and refined. So the prices aren't as out of control as they seem. Yes, they have gotten more expensive beyond just the inflation, but they've also gotten much better.
I mean, I think that this is a much nicer truck to drive, and I think it, if you have a family, obviously this is the way to go.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced, though, that all of these electronics and emission systems are going to hold up to the same abuse that your truck has, because your truck is what, 258,000 miles?
270,
Yeah.
269.
And it's just fundamentally like this screen we have, right? That this is just a lot of equipment to be able to last 30 years and 270,000 miles, and I'm not sure it's going to do it.
No, there's pros and cons to the simplicity. This truck is more sophisticated and more comfortable, but I would wager that it is going to have more maintenance items than my truck over that same span.
I think you're kind of spot on the money there. It still is a Cummins. It still has a lot of the same character, not to that same extent that I think Case's truck has, but they're still cool, right? And they're still diesel powered and they're still turbocharged. So in this world of electrification we live in, you guys still have an option for something a little bit more old school, which is always good.
Well, Tommy, I hope you brought an umbrella because it is not super dry underneath my truck. Typical old school Cummins. We've actually replaced quite a few seals on here, front main, rear main. But, you know, that's just a little bit of how these trucks are.
One thing I'm seeing, though, is just how beefy everything is. I mean, it's just a chonk under here. Look at your control arms, your drive shafts, your diffs are just massive.
It is pretty hefty. It's a Dana 60 front axle, Dana 80 rear axle, and then hell, if you look at these brakes, I mean, they're pretty big brakes in the rear. Still pretty old school. We've got leaf springs and drum brakes back here. This is that big Dana 80 rear axle. So it's all pretty hefty stuff, but what we'll notice when we go underneath the new truck is that stuff has gotten even bigger. That being said, the layout of these trucks, the way that they're structured, is very similar.
And what's cool about this is, because there's not a lot of electronics or sensors or features like that, I mean, everything is so accessible, right? You can poke and prod and get a wrench on every bolt underneath here, from your transfer case to your transmission to your oil pan. It's all just right there up front and center.
Yeah, and with the height that it's at, it's when I do have to work on it, it's really easy to get access to. I just roll right underneath it. No need to put it up on jack stands or ramps or anything. It's tall enough that I can just get under it.
All right, so Case noticed some cool things about the frame differences. First of all, the old truck Case doesn't have a fully boxed frame, right?
Yeah, exactly. It looks like height-wise, at this point in the frame, it's about 9.5 inches.
Okay.
If I can read backwards. And yeah, as you can see, it is not fully boxed.
Yeah, interesting. So you actually have like an open C channel here.
Yeah, so we'll have a little bit more flex. Like with my truck, the layout on this is all very similar. You're gonna find the exhaust routed on the same side, transfer case and drive shaft going forward in the same position. It's unsurprisingly, it's all very laid out similar, but everything is much beefier. Look how substantial that front axle is. It's insane.
You're right. Actually, I was expecting this to look pretty different underneath here. And Case told me off camera, he's like, they'll look pretty much the same. And he was exactly right. I mean, the similarities under here, it's crazy, right? The way, even the positioning of the fuel tank relative to the exhaust, it's just like you took Case's Cummins and you increase the size by 20% on everything.
Yeah, everything is much bigger, much more substantial. It's impressive being underneath this truck, just how huge it all is.
You want to take a measurement on that frame? Let's see how the height difference has changed over the years.
Let's see. So in a similar spot, actually, height-wise, it's not quite, let's see. I can barely
Frame calisthenics here.
Let's
Let's see what number we got there. Oh, just 7 inches.
Yeah, so it's not quite as tall, but it is boxed. So that makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. And then like you look at the axles and control arms, and this is running a BDS suspension, so obviously that's not going to be quite apples to apples. But yeah, and like you'll notice stuff like skid plates, right? This transfer case has got a pretty nice size skid plate on it. And then if you got like a Rebel trim, you would have had even more skid plates. So that's a little bit of a difference too. So Case, the 94 or the new truck, which one you taking home?
The one that I own, especially because price considered, this truck, a lot less, even though some people say they are getting overpriced, they're probably right. This truck's still a lot less expensive than a brand new truck, and if I wanted to spend even half the money of that new truck, I could turn this into something that's every bit as bad off-road.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think for me, even though I'm a wimp and I like the creature comforts, that old Cummins is just iconic, especially with that manual transmission. It's just an experience driving that thing. Where the new one's nice, it doesn't give you that same kind of fizz that you get with the old one.
That being said, the new truck does have a boatload of extra capability, and it comes with some awesome features, so they're both awesome trucks to have around.
Well, folks, let us know what you guys think in the comments section below. Stay tuned for next weekend for another Classics video. And Case, thanks for doing this.
Anytime.
We'll see you next time.